Hello everyone, I'm your host Caitlin Daniel, creator of Sci-Fi Leadership, and if you're new here, welcome. I specialize in empowering leaders as they navigate how to best support mental health and well-being in our schools. Today's episode, we're going to highlight 5 early signs of worsening mental health in children and teens. Across the United States, school-aged children are experiencing mental health issues at troubling rates. Just take a look at some of these most recent statistics. Struggling with your mental health in childhood and adolescence can impact a person's health, relationships, personal safety, social and academic success, and life expectancy, which is why it is imperative to be able to recognize the early signs that someone may be struggling with their mental health before their experiences, signs, and symptoms escalate without adequate support. Let's get started. So today's topic is something that I'm very passionate about because of my lived experience with my own mental health as a youth and my experience watching others who I am very close to show these early warning signs, but no one noticing them until it escalated into a mental health crisis. Now, even as an adult, I've struggled with recognizing these signs in a young person. And that's hard because it can leave you feeling racked with guilt as you replay the events in your head or replay the signs that you now recognize in hindsight, but only after the young person in your life's mental health got to a very critical point where intervention and support from all sides was necessary. And if you are a parent or a trusted adult of a young person with a very similar experience, I want you to know that I see you and it's not your fault. We couldn't have recognized the early signs if we don't know what they are. And no one talks about them enough, which is one of the reasons why I made this channel. And the truth is that youth mental health often goes undetected by adults, sometimes for months or years. And it's not because parents, teachers, and school personnel don't care. That's simply not true. Rather, it's because there's not enough awareness and education on mental health signs and symptoms. In fact, recent studies on youth mental health by authors Nelson and Hardwood 2011 and Louis et al. 2023 both reported that teachers and parents have difficulty recognizing subtle behavioral changes such as depression and anxiety-related symptoms in children and teens. And these studies were conducted over a decade apart, yet we are seeing the same outcomes. Our teachers and parents are struggling to recognize the signs that children and teens are struggling with their mental health. Authors Nelson and Hardwood also found that teachers tended to either not recognize or completely overlook mental health issues in students because their behavior did not impact the learning that was happening in the classroom. This is problematic, but it's happening. However, there is an opportunity for parents, teachers, leaders, and school staff to be able to recognize the early signs and intervene to better support a student who may be struggling. So, here are the 5 early signs of worsening mental health in children and teens. Early warning sign number 1 is difficulty concentrating. This could be when you notice that a child or a teen suddenly seems very distracted in their work, like whether they're doing homework or watching TV or playing a game or socializing with others. They might seem that they're having trouble being connected and being present. Their eyes may look glazed over, or they might be trying to escape, whether it's through using social media or increasing screen time. Especially when you try to engage in communication with them, they'll often be very withdrawn and not seem that they're totally present within the conversation. And remember, with all of these early warning signs that I'm going to mention here today, this is signs that you're seeing that is happening over weeks or months or maybe even within the last year. And it was something that the young person that you know was not doing previously or seems to maybe getting worse. And for difficulty concentrating, A big key indicator could be that they're not able to focus on their work, they're having trouble completing tasks, whether it's chores or meeting expectations at an extracurricular activity, or their performance seems off, whether academically or with sports or with socializing. Difficulty concentrating can affect several aspects of a student's success, both socially and academically, so it is one to keep an eye on. Early warning sign number 2 is one that's very important, and it is loss of interest. This could be whether a child or a teen was involved in an extracurricular activity or was really involved in music or art or dance or something that they're very, very interested in, and suddenly now they don't seem interested in it at all. And it was something that they genuinely loved to do or that they did often. This could be an early indicator that your child may be feeling some signs of maybe experiencing some distress with their mental health, or early signs of depression or anxiety, or feeling very withdrawn is when they withdraw from all of their interests that they were interested in. I know in one of my experiences with a young person in my life who I love very, very much, we didn't recognize it at first, because it can be hard to tell that someone has lost interest in something they once had interested in. It had been months with them struggling, and suddenly they started playing music, which they used to play music all the time. And it wasn't until I reheard them playing music that I questioned why it had been so long since I had heard them play music before. And that was kind of a very clear sign that something was going on with them, with their mental health, and they probably needed more support. And that's kind of when you start reaching out. But if you're more able to know that you need to keep an eye out on what your child or teen is interested in, and that if they suddenly stop doing that thing, you might notice it a little bit sooner, and you might be able to offer them more support sooner. So loss of interest is a big one, because we all have things that we are interested in and that we love, whether it's reading or video games or music or art. The list is endless. So if someone suddenly loves doing those things and then they stop engaging with them, and and more than a few weeks or months go by, it might be time to be more direct and intervene and reach out to make sure that that child has support, because it may be an indicator that they're struggling with their mental health. Sign number 3 is an important one, and one that I do have experience with, but it is emotional outbursts. So I know children and teens can experience a range of emotions, and part of that process is learning how to regulate your emotion and communicating what your needs are, and being able to have sustainable relationships with others, and especially in a family or friend dynamic, being able to maybe be in conflict with someone, but doing it in a loving, respecting, and supportive way. That way you don't ruin those relationships. Now, when I mean by emotional outburst, these can start small, but can end up being these huge moments of a lot of emotion that is erupting from your child or teen that may have been triggered by something very small or very minor. It could look like extreme overwhelm or upset or anger that is coming out. And what I mean by emotional outburst also is that the child or teen seems to have trouble regulating those emotions as they're surfacing. This is a very clear sign that a child is struggling with their mental health, and that they might need help from a trusted adult in their life, whether it's a parent, a teacher, a counselor, a school psychologist, or really anyone in the school system who is noticing that this child is having emotional outbursts. Can intervene and offer proper support. So remember, emotional outburst is not just they got upset and it was, one time. This is an emotional outburst that happens more frequently, and it's with overwhelm and anger or sadness, and it's often triggered by something that's very small or trivial, and it completely overwhelms their system and they're just not able to regulate. And when someone's not able to regulate their emotional responses, it is a sign that their mental health is struggling, and so they will need your support. But that is a really big one. Sign number 4 is important, and it's often hard to recognize, especially in teenagers, because we often think of teenagers as they're just always in their room and they want their space and they don't want to be around anybody. So sign number 4 is isolation. So is your child or teenager completely isolating themselves off from family, from friends? Are they cutting themselves off from social media, or are they diving into social media only as like a means to escape? Are they not wanting to go out with friends? Are they not wanting to see or hang out with family, even though they used to? And remember, isolation goes beyond just needing some space, and it becomes something that is very frequent and reoccurring, and is reoccurring for several weeks to months at a time. And isolation is hard to recognize at first, so it's an important one to keep an eye on, which is why I'm mentioning it in this video, because it goes beyond just needing some space. It is someone who is slowly withdrawing from their social connections, from their relationships, from their family, from their friends, from their jobs, from going to school, from extracurriculars. They are slowly receding into themselves and becoming completely shut off. And when you're completely shut off like that, you're only around your own mind, your own thoughts, and it can be a quick way to get trapped in our internal processes. And it can be hard if someone's in an isolated state and they're isolating because they're struggling with their mental health. It can be hard for them to break through that on their own. And that's when it's really up to those in their lives to intervene and support them and reach out to them to let them know that it's okay if they want some space, but that they're not alone and that you are here to support them with whatever they need. And lastly, sign number 5 is changes in appetite or appearance. Changes in either one of these is an early indicator that a child or a teenager may be struggling with their mental health. So in terms of appetite, have you noticed that the young person in your life has either been eating too much or too little? Have they had rapid weight gain or weight loss? Are they hyper-fixated on what they are eating, whether it's types of foods they are eating or how much they are eating, or whether or not they're commenting on their body or appearance more than normal, especially when they're eating or after they've just eaten? I feel like changes in appetite is one that we miss because there's just not enough awareness around that. And I know it can be difficult to navigate that because children and teens do go through a lot of growth spurts, and I know there's always the joke that teenagers eat a lot because they're growing, of course, and so you always want to feed them, and so you always have snacks around. But changes in appetite go beyond what is normal for how much a child should be eating in relation to like their growth spurts and to sustain the amount of physical activity and sleep and all of that they're used to. Changes in appetite really mean that they're eating way too much or way too little for what was considered normal for them. And in terms of appearance, so changes in appearance, remember, they go beyond whether or not a young person is trying out a new style or is playing around with changing their appearance, because we all have been, children and teenagers, and you kind of like find yourself through your clothes in that time. So it's normal to explore and experiment and just try to find what you love to wear. Changes in appearance are, things that the young person in your life has suddenly started doing, such as wearing long sleeves, long pants, even if it's really uncomfortable, or it's extremely hot outside, that they're not wanting to change to be more comfortable, and that they're okay with multiple layers of clothing, or that the clothing looks disheveled or unhygienic. This could be a sign that a young person is really struggling with their mental health. Remember, changes in appearance has nothing to do with going through phases and styles of clothes. Really, it's about the cleanliness of the clothing and whether or not the clothing is appropriate for the temperature and atmosphere and activities that the young person is engaged in. If you notice one or more of these signs in a young person, please consider reaching out to others to let them know your concerns and explore how you can best work together to support a child who may be struggling with their mental health. I implore you not to dismiss these early warning signs just because all teenagers have mood swings, or all kids are emotional, or kids these days wear hoodies in the summertime, or every kid today is a little anxious. Don't do it. Don't normalize and dismiss these early indicators. We all need to work together because we all need to take the mental health of our children and teens seriously. And our school systems have a unique opportunity here. They have an opportunity to increase awareness, dismantle stigmas around mental health, and curate resources that are there to support parents and teachers in better recognizing these signs and navigating supports for youth in and outside of school. So, as leaders in education, let's continue having these conversations. Let's continue to talk about how we can partner with our families and communities, and how we can create more sustainable structures for our school personnel so that they can better support students in their mental health without feeling overburdened in the process. All right, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more educational mental health content made for school leadership, please subscribe to join this amazing community here on YouTube. I have videos releasing every Tuesday on topics around mental health. Until next time, happy practicing. Take care.